All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Why You Can't Handle the Truth. I'm Sergeant O. Today we're going to talk about 3 California propositions that all claim they're going to help solve one problem: housing affordability. Proposition 1, Proposition 37, and Proposition 45. Now, before anybody gets mad, before somebody says, Sergeant O, you telling people who to vote for or what to vote for, let me stop you right there. Look, don't trust me. Seriously, don't trust me. Go read the propositions yourself. Go read the legislative analyst report. Go read the official voter guide. Everything we're discussing today is public. You can find it in public information. My goal isn't to tell you what to think. My goal is to get you to think. And here's one thing I learned over the years: never vote for a title. Vote for what's inside, because politicians are really good at writing titles that make you feel good. Housing affordability, helping veterans, helping middle-income families. Who doesn't support those things? The question isn't whether the title sounds good. The question is, what are you actually voting for? That's what we're going to break down today. Not the commercials, not the campaign slogans, the actual propositions. So let's start with proposition number 1. Now, proposition 1, the official title is authorizes bonds for housing affordability programs. Sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Housing affordability. Who wouldn't want that? But let's look past the title. Here's what Proposition 1 actually does. It authorized California to borrow $11.25 billion. Now, that breaks down into 2 parts. About $10 billion goes toward affordable housing programs, and $1.25 billion go towards the existing CalVet home loan program for eligible veterans. Now, I'm going to stop you right there because I am an Army veteran. When I see the word veteran, it gets my attention. It should. But being a veteran doesn't mean I stop reading after I see one word. Here's what caught my attention. About 11% of this measure is tied to the CalVet home loan program, and 89% goes to the broader affordable housing program. Now, let me be crystal clear. I'm not against helping veterans. Like I said, I am a veteran. I'm saying don't let one word keep you from reading the rest of the proposition. Supporters of Proposition 1 argue California has a severe housing shortage. They argue we need more affordable housing. They argue veterans deserve additional opportunities to buy homes. That's their argument. And it's important that you hear it now. Now, here's where I step in. California tells us housing is too expensive. I agree. Housing is too expensive. Now, let me ask you a question. If we've seen affordable housing projects in California cost anywhere from around $350,000 per apartment to over $1 million per apartment to build, depending on the project, shouldn't fixing that be priority number 1? Shouldn't we be asking, why does one affordable apartment cost 3 times as much as another? Why are projects taking years? Why do permits, delays, lawsuits, redesigns, and financing costs add so much to the final price? Because here's what I see. Instead of fixing why housing costs so much, Sacramento keeps coming back asking permission to borrow more money. Now think about this in an everyday life. Let's say your brother keeps asking you to borrow money. Of course, you help him out. A few months later, he needs another loan. Then another. Then another. But nothing ever changes. At some point, you're going to say, hold on now. Before I loan you another dime, how about we fix what's causing the problem? That's how I look at California. Fix the system first, then come back and ask for some money. Now, let me say something that's going to make some of you laugh. People tell me all the time, like, Sergeant, what? I mean, shouldn't you trust Sacramento? Really? Do any of y'all? I trust Sacramento about as much as I trust a fart when I got diarrhea. History tells me to ask questions before I hand over another credit card. And here's one more thing. I think words matter. When politicians put veterans, affordable housing on the front of their proposition, those are words almost everybody supports. But don't let those words stop you from reading the rest. Supporting veterans and asking hard questions are not opposites. You can do both. As a veteran, I want honest leadership, not emotional marketing. That's why, after reading Proposition 1, my position is no. Now, if Proposition 1 was about borrowing money for a housing program, well, Proposition 37 takes a different approach. Instead of borrowing money to fund housing programs, it creates a new state-run home buyer loan program. Now, before I tell you what I think, let's look at what it actually says. The official title is Creates Loan Programs for Middle-Income Buyers of Qualified New Homes. Again, sounds pretty good, huh? Who doesn't want middle-income families to be able to buy a home? But let's read past the title. Here's what Proposition 37 actually does. It allows California to issue up to $25 billion in revenue bonds. Now, let me explain something. This isn't the same type of bond as Proposition 1. Supporters point at these revenue bonds are intended to be repaid through participating homeowners' loan payments, not directly from California's general fund. That's an important distinction. The program would help eligible middle-income California purchase certain newly built homes. Qualified buyers generally provide at least 3% down payment. The state assistance loan may provide up to 17% of the purchase price. The buyer still has to qualify for the traditional mortgage for the rest. There are income limits, there are residence requirements, there are occupant requirements. This isn't a free house. It's a government-backed home buyer assistance program. Now, let's be fair. Here's what supporters say. They say California's middle class has been squeezed out of home ownership. They say people make too much money to qualify for many low-income housing programs, but not enough money to save for California's size down payment. They believe this program fills that gap. Supporters also argue that by limiting assistance to newly built homes, developers will have more incentives to build. That's their argument. Now, of course, this is where I step in. Let me ask you something. If a house costs $900,000, does helping somebody borrow more money make that house affordable? Or does it simply help them finance an expensive house? See, those are two different things to me. California keeps treating the symptom instead of curing the disease. If housing's too expensive, shouldn't we be asking why? Why does it cost so much to build? Why does it take years to get approvals? Why do affordable housing projects sometimes cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, or even more than $1 million per unit? Those are the questions I want to answer. Not how do we help people borrow more money? Now, here's another thing that caught my attention. Supporters say this program encourages constructions. Maybe it does. I hope every new home gets built, but here's what concerns me. If the government gives more people buying power before we've meaningfully lowered the cost of building, are we creating more affordable housing? Or are we creating more buyers chasing homes that are already expensive? That's something every voter ought to think about. Now, let's talk about something else. Labor. Supporters say Proposition 37 includes labor standards that help promote working or worker protections and construction quality. Fair enough. That's their argument. Now here's mine. I believe California has made building so expensive that many small contractors struggle just to compete. Think about your local contractor. Has what, 5 employees, maybe 6 employees? Say a family business. Now compare that with a giant construction company that has attorneys, compliance departments, administrative staff, entire teams dedicated to government paperwork. These unions are big time donors to our politicians and get a lot of things. Who has an easier time? That's a fair question. I'm not attacking workers. I'm asking whether California has created a system where bigger organizations have built in advantages over smaller competitors. Because here's what I believe. Competition generally pushes prices down. When fewer companies are realistically able to compete, prices usually don't go lower. Now let me be clear. The proposition itself does not say every non-union contractor is banned. It doesn't. But I don't think California's broader regulatory environment deserves scrutiny. In my opinion, the more complicated and expensive it becomes to build, the fewer people can afford to do it. And eventually, the costs show up in the price of the home. That's my concern. Here's another way I look at it. Imagine a concert, about what, $500 a ticket. Everybody wants a ticket, but can't afford it. Instead of building a bigger venue, lowering the prices, the government starts helping people borrow money to buy those same $500 tickets. Did the tickets become cheaper? No, they're probably going to go up. More people just have money to bid on the same limited number of seats. That's why I keep coming back to the same question. Why aren't we fixing the cost of building first? Why aren't we reducing unnecessary delays? Why aren't we encouraging more competition? Why aren't we making homes cheaper to build before creating another finance program? And one last thing. Like I said, people say, so no, you got to trust Sacramento. And you already know my answer. I trust them as much as, well, you know the rest. Listen, maybe everything works out. Or maybe it just runs down your leg. But history has taught me to ask a question before I hand over another checkbook. So after reading Proposition 37, after looking at both sides, my conclusion is simple. I'm voting no on Proposition 37. I'm done giving these guys money when they haven't done anything right with it. Now you might be thinking, Sergeant, no, you voted no on Proposition 1. You voted no on Proposition 37. Is there anything on the ballot that you actually support? And the answer to that is yes, there is. In my opinion, it's the only one of these three that starts by addressing why housing has become so expensive in the first place. So let's talk about Proposition 45. We talked about Proposition 1. We talked about Proposition 37. I've told you why I'm voting no on both. There is one proposition I actually support, and that's Proposition 45. Now let's do exactly what we've done with the other two. Let's read the title first. Modifies environmental review for certain projects. certain project. Now, I know the title doesn't exactly make you want to jump up and cheer. It doesn't say veterans, doesn't say affordable housing, it doesn't say middle-class families. It's actually kind of boring. But sometimes the boring propositions is the one that matters the most. Of course, they don't want you to vote for that. That's why I put a boring title on it. So what does Proposition 45 actually do? Supporters say Proposition 45 changes California's environmental review process for certain qualifying projects. It creates tighter timelines. It changes portions of the permitting process. It changes portions of the court review procedures. Supporters believe those changes will reduce delays. And when projects move faster, builders spend less money on interest, less money on attorneys, less money on carrying costs, less money sitting around waiting. And when those costs go down, housing has a better chance of becoming more affordable. That's the supporters' argument. Now, here's mine. One thing that I like about Proposition 45, everybody who watches my show knows something about me. I'm no fan of the way California has handled environmental policies. I've criticized it. Right now there's statistics out there about England and their clean air and how climate's getting hotter. And I'm not going to suddenly sit here and pretend that I'm the poster child for California's environmental movement just because it sounds good on podcasts. That's not me. I'm going to stay real with you. I believe environmental policies in California have too often been used in ways that delay projects, increase costs, and make normal life more expensive for everyday Californians. That's what I believe, but here's something else I've learned. There are people who generally care about the environmental protection. And if I expect those people to listen to what I believe, then I got to be willing to listen to what they believe. I don't have to agree with everything they believe. To recognize that concern is real. Nobody wants polluted drinking water. Nobody wants toxic chemicals dumped into the rivers. Nobody wants somebody building something dangerous without anybody checking it. Those are legitimate concerns. I get it. My problem isn't simply that environmental review exists. My problem is when environmental review becomes endless environmental review, when something designed to protect people becomes a tool that can delay projects for years, drive costs through the roof, and make housing even more unaffordable. That's where I believe California has gone too far. Think about this. You hire somebody to remodel your kitchen. They tell you 3 months. 3 months becomes 6 months. 6 months becomes a year. A year becomes 3 years. Did that kitchen suddenly become cheaper? Hell no. Every month costs money. Every delay costs money. Every attorney costs money. Every loan payment costs money. Every additional requirement costs money. And eventually, somebody pays. The builder may write the check first, but eventually, that cost gets passed to somewhere, to the buyer, to the renter, or to the taxpayer. That's why Proposition 45 caught my attention, because unlike the other two propositions, this one starts asking a different question. Instead of, how do we borrow more money? Instead of, how do we help people finance expensive housing? It starts asking, how do we get these damn projects moving? That's different. And that's what I'm talking about this entire podcast. Fix the underlying problem. If housing takes too long to build, make it faster. If it's unnecessary delays are costing money, reduce the delays. If California isn't building enough housing, figure out what's preventing people from building it. That's what reform looks like to me. Now, I'm not telling you Proposition 45 is perfect. I'm not telling you to blindly trust me because Sergeant O said it's good. Hell, that would, of course, contradict everything I've told you for the last 20 minutes. Listen, read it. There may be something in there you don't like. There may be something I don't like. Read what the supporters say. Read what the opponents say. Then decide for yourself. But after looking at these three approaches, I believe Proposition 45 comes closest to addressing one of California's underlying affordability problems. How long? How complicated? And how expensive? We've made it to build. That's why my vote, I'm going to say yes on Proposition 45. Now, let's bring this whole thing together because today wasn't really about three propositions. It was about one question. How do we make California affordable again? Proposition 1 essentially says authorize billions in long-term debt for housing programs. Proposition 37 says create a state home buyer assistance financing program. And Proposition 45 says change parts of the system that can delay projects. After looking at all three, here's where I stand. Proposition 1 is a no. Proposition 37 is a no. Proposition 45, that's a yes. But here's what I really want you to take away from this episode. You don't have to agree with me. I didn't make this podcast because I want blind agreement. I made it because I want people asking better questions. Who's writing the rules? Who benefits from those rules? Who pays the price? Who's sitting at the table when these policies are written? And just as importantly, who's not sitting at that table? Now, let me make something crystal clear. I'm not attacking the guy getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and swinging a hammer. I'm not attacking the teacher trying to educate our kids. I'm not attacking the electrician, the carpenter, the pipe fitter, the nurse, or anybody else getting up every morning and working their ass off to provide for their family. My issue isn't with working people. My issue is with power. Because I don't care whether it's a corporation, a union, a billionaire, a lobbying organization, a political party, or the government itself. When somebody has enough political influence to help shape the rules, and they can also benefit from those same rules, every one of us should be starting to ask questions. Not because they're automatically corrupt, not because they're automatically wrong, which we know they are, and we know they are corrupt, but because accountability matters, competition matters, transparency matters. And I believe ordinary people deserve a seat at the table too. Because here's what I believe about capitalism. Capitalism works when people compete. You work harder, you innovate, you provide the better service, you offer the better price, you treat your customer better, and you earn the business. What I don't want is a system where success depends on who has the best lobbyists, who donated the right campaign, who knows the right politician, who's paying the play, or who helped write the rules. That's not competition I believe in. I want the hungry guy to have a shot. I want the small contractor to have a shot. I want the family business to have a shot. And I want the person willing to work harder than anybody else to have a shot. And that brings me to something bigger than these three propositions. Something I learned in life: nobody works harder for you than somebody who has to earn your business. Think about that. And no politician, no political party, no organization will ever work as hard for you as the one that has to earn your vote. The moment they think they've got your vote, no matter what, that's the moment accountability starts disappearing. You see that a lot here in California. So don't give anybody a blank check. Not a Republican, not a Democrat, not unions, not corporations, not billionaires, not the government, and damn sure not me. Make every one of us earn your trust every election, every policy, every vote. And that's why I told you at the beginning of this podcast, don't trust me. Fact check me. Read Proposition 1 yourself. Read Proposition 37 yourself. Read Proposition 45 yourself. Read the arguments supporting them. Read the arguments opposing them. Then ask yourself, where does the money go? Who benefits? Who pays? Who takes the risk? And does this actually solve the problem? Or does it just make us feel like we're solving the problem? Then make your decision. Because the moment we stop asking questions, the moment we stop demanding accountability, the moment we stop reading past the title, and the moment we start handling our trust to somebody simply because they tell us they're on our side, somebody else starts doing our thinking for us, and maybe that's the truth. Some people don't want you asking questions long enough to discover, and that's why you can't handle the truth. Till next time, I'm Sergeant O. I approve this goddamn message. Next time we'll be talking about Proposition 39 and the little tricks they're trying to do to get you to vote against it. You guys have a good day.